Welcome to the Goodbye Good Girl Project. This is where you have an invitation, a standing invitation to leave the unconscious social programming and step into your outrageous authenticity and your leadership. There we go. Now, today I have with us Jocelyn Hastie. Oh boy, are you in for a treat? Jocelyn is the creator of something called the Cowgirls Code. This is a powerful training and an attitude that inspires and empowers women to step both higher and deeper into their leadership. Now, Jocelyn does something amazing. She works with horses. She uses horses in her work with people because horses directly reflect how and who we are. And they also reflect how and who we need to be with others. And some years back, Jocelyn, in her words, faced a shocking realization. Her leadership style alternated between bullying and bribery. I mean, I know that sounds very familiar. She realized that horses would not put up with that kind of approach. And she, quote, uncovered the true essence of leadership, becoming someone that others choose to follow, not out of fear or force, but through trust and mutual respect. Amazing. We both work on the same side of the street, but she's an extraordinary, unique person to work with if you are in leadership. So, wow, Jocelyn, welcome, welcome. I'm so happy you're here.
I'm happy I'm here too.
I'm thrilled that you're working with women in leadership. It is just such a necessary thing for us. And I would love for you to talk about what it is that brought you to this kind of work, to this realization, because your words about learning the nature of leadership are powerful to my ears.
Why, thank you, Lori. When I started working with the horses, I had been supervising people for about 8 years. I broke into the supervisory ranks when I was only 22 years old. And I really thought that they had selected me because of my superior leadership skills. After I spent time with the horses 8 years later, I found out that it was not my superior leadership skills, but my technical accounting skills that had gotten me into those leadership roles. The thing about horses is that they walk all over doormats and they avoid bullies. And the essence of the true leader in a herd of horses is not the most powerful or dominant one. It is the one that makes the other horses around them feel safe.
Really? So they are going more for safety than anything else? Is that correct?
Absolutely. There is nothing a horse wants more than to get over what frightens them and get back to grazing.
Wow. So if we translate that to how we are as women in this culture, where it is suggested regularly through the media and through people that we interact with that we should pretty much sit down and shut up or act like the guys. How does that translate? How do we find our safety?
We find our safety, I think it always starts with self-awareness. I'm sure I'm not the only person in this universe and listening to this podcast that has felt like, oh, it's not that big a deal. It's not that important. It's not worth fighting over. It's not worth upsetting anyone over. And meanwhile, we keep eating it and becoming more and more resentful until we eventually blow up and we damage our relationships. And I see in the horses, like I said, the one that's the leader is not the one that's willing to kick and bite in order to get the best pile of hay. It is the one that the others feel safe grazing around. It's the one that the others follow to the water trough.
So really for you, it's about the leadership style, and it's also about safety. And
And the piece with that, Lori, that I was getting to is that if we cannot make decisions to keep ourselves safe first, we cannot make anyone else feel safe. So when we are lying to ourselves and we are not self-aware, and we make the mistakes of throwing ourselves under the bus. Until we get to a place that we keep ourselves safe, we cannot help anyone else to feel safe.
Wow. In which ways, I have two questions. I want to move back for just a second to your work
Sure.
with horses. So how do you help women become better leaders by working with horses, having them work with
That's
horses?
really fun. What I find is one of the things I love to do is a led obstacle course. So it's a very simple obstacle course. I ask them to maybe serpentine through some traffic cones, walk over some poles. It's maybe do a figure eight around a couple of people. And what we're doing at that point in time is giving women the somatic awareness of what it is like to have someone much bigger and stronger than you choose to follow you. Once you felt that in your body by leading a horse through this obstacle course, you will never forget it.
Say a little bit, if you would, about somatic, and
Okay,
describe that for the
somatic is just
audience.
your body awareness, just what it felt like in your body to lead a horse. And I really encourage them while they're doing it to think about how they feel, because most of the time, oh my goodness, the women are so proud of themselves when they realize the horse is looking to them to be the leader. You also get to experience things like when you're doing a serpentine through the cones, you have to make sure that you give enough room both for yourself and the horse. So when you're on the inside, you have to make sure the horse is far enough out so that you're not being run into the cone. When you're on the outside, you have to allow enough room for the horse to not be running over the cone. So you become intimately aware of both yourself and your follower. And that directly goes into your body, and you can close your eyes and remember, what did it feel like when I was leading that horse, when that much bigger, stronger, and that's the thing too, is that it is a being that is much bigger and stronger than you are and could tell you to get lost at any moment, could take off. So they're there because they choose to be there with you.
That is incredibly resonant. Does it end up making women act differently once they go back to their offices or their businesses?
What it does, I find, and I've heard from them, is that they feel a little braver standing up for themselves. They feel a little braver making their opinions known. They
Yes,
remember what it was like to be the one that someone else chose to follow.
that's not a normal thing in our lives, for sure. One of the things that you mention in your information, your marketing information, I apologize, I forgot to put my mic back on. Um, is one of the things is boundaries. This is
Right.
traditionally such a difficult thing.
It
You could talk
is.
about your view on boundaries and women and what they
Yeah,
are, what they're not.
love to. What boundaries are not is barriers.
Hmm.
And one of the most frustrating thing I've found is that the women that could use help with boundaries the most tend to be the ones that tell me, I tried that once and it didn't work. When we explore why it didn't work, I often find that by the time they've drawn a boundary, they are so angry and resentful that it is not an open-hearted, loving boundary. It's a hard, firm boundary. Indeed, it's a barrier. Now, unless someone has been absolutely disrespectful, it is going to be difficult. And when you are changing your relationship, when you have always been the one to acquiesce, it is going to take time. So when I work with women around boundaries, one of the things, I'll tell a story about a horse again. I have a great big black mare. She's got a, she's got, she's long bodied. She's got long, thick mane and tail. And I can almost see her laugh when I put her in the round pen loose with the client. What she does is shift her weight towards the client, and the client will almost always back off. And then she shifts her weight again. And within a matter of 5 minutes, I'm usually outside the gate and the client is in the pen with the horse. In a matter of 5 minutes, she's moved that client 6 feet away. She's done that 6 inches at a time. And she's done it just by shifting her weight. And how the women have drawn the boundary is to step out of her space. And I can almost see that mare laughing at them, because all they would need to do to stop her is to take 2 fingers and push on her shoulder. 2 fingers. That's all it would take. If they did that, she would stop doing it. So my likening for people is that if you can learn just to push those 2 fingers and use only as much force as necessary to draw your boundary and ask someone to be more conscious of the way they speak to you. It can start just with something small. Now, like I said, though, if there are long established patterns in your relationship, the longer you've had the relationship where you know you've allowed someone to crash your boundaries, the longer that's been going on, the more difficult it's going to be. So I usually encourage women just to start with something small, something like when their meal comes at a restaurant and it's not what they ordered or it's not cooked the way they wanted, just to send it back. And to do it not accusatorily, but just saying, you know, I asked for medium rare and this is rare. Could you just put it back on the grill for me? And I think that when we get used to asking for what we want and asking politely, like I say about cowgirl confidence, it's when we can balance tenderness and toughness rooted in truth and delivered with tact. So that's where the tact comes in. We don't have to be a B word to be a leader or to stick up for ourselves.
I talk about that similarly, and I like to mention the difference between being a nice girl and
Mhm.
being a kind woman.
Right.
Because to me, nice means I have to give up all my power and let you just have whatever you want. And being kind means I get to keep that boundary. I get to keep my strength and be
Mhm.
polite,
And maybe
be considerate.
negotiate.
Yeah,
Boundaries often need to be negotiated, what feels good for both people.
absolutely. Um, so this is only part of being a woman of confidence, right? Uh-oh, I lost you. Oh no, you froze. Okay, we're back.
Okay.
We're
Yeah,
fine.
that's
We're fine. We're just having a few computer glitches. It's a winter thing.
it is.
But okay, so boundaries, I would think in your work are only a part of showing up as a woman of confidence. Is that
They are
correct?
only a part, but they are one of the foundations. And like I said, it can't happen
Yeah.
until you're self-aware, until you believe you deserve to have what you need.
Well, what are we becoming self-aware of first? In
We're
other words, if you
becoming
could,
aware that, first of all, we're not saying it's not okay, or pardon me, we aren't saying it's okay if it's not. We're being clear on
ah,
what works for us and what does not. And we're not pretending something doesn't matter when it does. For me, I honestly believe that the reason I ended up with cancer and cancer in the throat was because I wasn't prepared to speak up for myself.
whoa, you had which stage of cancer did you survive?
Stage 4.
That's amazing.
Now, the cancer I had, if you have to have a stage 4 cancer, it was the best one because about half of us make it, but it still was stage 4 cancer. And I do believe that when we live in a constant state of stress because we're not being true to ourselves, that
Yes.
really can open up our body for illness.
I agree with you completely. We are energy beings. And
Hmm.
when we shut down something for long enough, it either will manifest in our bodies or it will make us miserable humans.
Right.
Because I've seen so many women leaders who either fall to one side to trying to do it like the men do it and be, put
Right.
on the armor and be strong like that, or just become drones and just
And yeah,
do what
and
they're
that's
told.
exactly what I was saying when I said that I alternated between bullying and bribery. I either, when someone talked to me about something that they needed, I'd just say no
Hmm.
without experimenting or negotiating. Or I'd like to tell you the cookie story. One
Tell
of
me
the
the
things
cookie
I did
story.
in order to make things better with my staff,
Hmm.
especially with this one woman who did not think I deserved to be in the role and often rolled her eyes at anything I had to say and undermined my authority every chance she got. One of the things I did was every other Friday, I would bake cookies for my staff and I would let them pick what kind of cookies they wanted. And
Okay.
she decided that what she wanted was snickerdoodles. Not easy cookies to make like chocolate chip or oatmeal, but snickerdoodles that require that you chill the pans and chill the dough because if you don't, you get a flat, crispy cookie instead of a fluffy, chewy cookie. But I made the snickerdoodles for her and she ate the snickerdoodles and she still rolled her eyes at me. And what I realized is that that was bribery. And what I was willing to do anything to make her like me. But I didn't even like her. I didn't like her. I didn't respect her opinion. And yet her opinion of me was so important that I would bake snickerdoodles. So now I ask myself when I find myself working really, really hard to get someone to like me, what cookies are you baking and why are you baking them?
Oh, I freaking love that. That's beautiful. I'm so going to borrow that.
Please do. But I
Wow.
ask myself that quite often when I find myself turning myself inside out, trying to get someone's approval. Are you baking snickerdoodles? And for who and why?
That's so awesome. I gave a talk last night and I was talking with a friend today and I was like, how do you think that went? And I could feel inside of me this need for approval and reassurance. And there's
Right.
nothing wrong with asking for reassurance. There's nothing wrong with asking for feedback. But I also had to wonder now in retrospect, was I baking sugar doodles? Is that what I was doing? Is that
Yeah,
what was happening? Because there's this part to the leadership thing where you have to be out on the front lines and you've
yeah,
done the best you can with checking to see if what you're saying is helpful and kind and all that, and then you just have to bring the courage, I guess, and jump in.
right.
So that makes
Yeah.
me want to ask, do you ever have leaders work with you who are terrified of horses and they
I
and they come
do.
anyway?
I do. And some of those I have the biggest turnarounds. One of the things we
Yeah.
usually do, Lori, early on is spend about 45 minutes grooming the horse. Because if I can get the woman to create the connection with the horse and to calm themselves, if I see the horse dancing, I know almost always the horse is picking up on the nervous energy of the person that's grooming them. So when
Wow.
we can spend time where generally what I do is have the person stand beside the horse, directly beside the horse, and put one hand on the horse's shoulder and another further back on the horse. And I have them do breathing exercises to center and ground themselves. And I ask them to think about themselves and their body first, and then think about the horse. Then think about themselves. I call it I, thou. And once I can get them to concentrate on being in their body, again, we're talking somatic awareness, to being in their body and relaxing and breathing quietly and calmly. the horse will almost always immediately settle. And they can see then how their anxiety has affected the way the relationship with the horse is going, has affected the connection with the horse. And then they think about that too when they go away, in how their energy may have caused an impact in the relationships that they have.
How do you work with that? Because that seems to me a very narrow line. In other words, it's easy for women to go into what did I do wrong,
Right. And
right?
they do almost immediately. And we talk about that the horse is picking up on your energy. So let's try just getting you calm and relaxed. I've touched wood, not had it fail to this point in time. We always manage to work through it. Sometimes it just takes a little longer. But with the horse, because it's such immediate feedback and it's so easy to see. With humans, we guard making the face, right? We try to make sure we're not making that, you know, the face. I don't have to
Mhm.
tell you what that face is.
Mhm.
But horses show you immediately, and many of them are not subtle about it. So you really do get the immediate feedback of where you are. And as soon as you can center and ground, the relationship with the horse changes. And I believe that once you can center and ground yourself, once you've felt that in your body and you remember how that feels, you can take it into your relationships with people as well.
What about something that you had mentioned when we were talking earlier about the how when the horse becomes a bully,
When
how
the
you
horse
have to.
becomes a bully, right? So that's one of the things you really need to pay attention to in working with horses and with humans, I think. There are two reasons that a horse will really misbehave. One is that they're fearful, and the second is that they're belligerent when they're turning into a bully. If they are fearful, the more up they get, the more anxious they get, the quieter and calmer and stiller I get, the less I ask them for. When they are belligerent and they're testing to see whether I'm going to let them be in control, and the way they most commonly do it is by moving my feet. Whoever moves the other's feet is the one that's in control of the situation with the horse. I'll give you a second
Interesting.
to digest that. The one
Yeah.
that can move the other's feet is the one that is in control of the situation. So if, for example, a horse starts to push into me to move me, I might get really big, whoa, and I might get really loud. I might flick the end of the rope at them and tell them that this is not your space. This is my space. And if I am moving them, now I don't do that to a horse that's nervous and anxious. I ask them for very little. But if they're a horse that's being a bully, I will get right back in their face. And the higher they get, the higher I get, if it's coming from bullying and belligerence. So I have learned, now that's last resort. If you go to an anxious horse and you immediately get really big and bold and loud with them, you frighten them worse. But if you set up the environment so that they can calm down and relax, and you show them that you are a safe person for them to be with, that they're okay when they're in your presence, that they feel better when you're there because you take care of things for them, they will look to you and they will calm down when they're in your presence rather than get heated.
So, I've been on the receiving end of a couple of bullying situations
Mhm.
within the last 4 months, um, unprovoked to my knowledge. What was
Right,
happening was, I in one event in one instance was I was being my confident self, and this one woman didn't like that. She felt she was being threatened, and then in another situation, it was just um, coming up against somebody whose whole life is lived like a bully. So the
right,
question I have for you is, in the human world, how do we deal with that? If we do back off and they
right.
keep bullying.
And I don't back off. I actually step into their space. And I'll give you an example. Let's talk about being bullied when there's a meeting at work and somebody's not letting you speak. They're interrupting you, and they're interrupting you frequently.
Yep.
Something I will do in that situation is say, "Excuse me, I'd like to listen to your response, but I haven't completed mine yet. Please give me a moment to complete, and then I'd be glad to hear what you have to say."
That's brilliant.
And
And what?
I don't get angry. I don't
Mhm.
get nasty. If they continue to interrupt me, I will actually physically put my hand up towards them.
Wow.
I don't step into their space, but I will put my palm up towards them and say, "I wasn't finished." I don't start out with putting my palm to them. I start out with, "Can you please let me finish?" And the other thing that I think is really important for women to do, and this is maybe really scary, is when you see another woman being bullied, to stand up for her and to say to the man, "Please," and because generally it is men, not always, but generally it is men, "Please, can you let her finish? I'd like to hear what she has to say."
Yes,
So when we can become the
100%.
advocate for other women, it makes it safer for them to speak up as well. And sometimes I get called a B word for doing what I do. And the honest truth of how I feel about that is if I wasn't standing up for myself, I wouldn't be called that.
It is a mark of honor at this point. And it doesn't mean that one is out of control or any of the sort of isms that are put on us. You're too emotional or you're whatever. It's none of those things. It's finally standing in our truth. So um, when we show up and we have to say no, we have to be assertive, and we get pushback, what is it that you recommend for, let's say, if somebody's in a system? I think you used to work in a system like this.
I
You're in
did,
that
yeah.
system where it feels like you have no options, but apparently you do. Can you talk to that?
Um, well, I think the last time I was really in a system like that was when I was finance manager out at a natural gas processing facility. And there had never been a woman in any position of authority there before I got there. And the guys really had the impression that they could ignore me, not follow the instructions that I asked them for example, with internal controls, that they needed to have approvals before they went ahead and bought things. And they'd try to hide purchases from me, but if you're going to be asking for reimbursement, I'm going to see it anyways. So what's the point? And my supervisor, in fact, told them, "You don't worry about her." And I
Mm,
needed to have the discussion with him and say, I don't tell you what to do beyond that plant gate. What happens in that plant, you are in charge of that. I am in charge of the bookkeeping and the accounting for what we do. And if you help me do a really good job of that accounting, I can help you make really good decisions by giving you information that will help you make those decisions. So it took a long time before they came to understand that I was really there to help them.
and you
And we were on the
maintained your
same team.
stance.
What's
Yeah,
that?
you maintained your stance for long enough,
Yeah,
and so that situations also helped you, and you
right.
just you didn't back down. And I think that's such an important point for us.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Well,
we're
and
very tired.
that doesn't mean I looked for fights or
No.
I joined every fight I was invited to. I didn't, but I picked the ones
Mm-mm.
that were important. And when they were important, I didn't get hysterical. I didn't get mad. I did the thing where the louder they got, the quieter I got at that point in time.
Right, right.
But I also didn't back down.
So let me ask about rewriting the rules. You have something in your work about rewriting the rules to reflect power and presence. That's
Right.
a remarkable sentence. Could you talk about how we can rewrite the rules.
We can rewrite the rules by challenging what we've been taught, by feeling when we are being disrespected or dismissed, and quietly but firmly standing our ground. I think that's the biggest thing is we are so often afraid that someone will not like us if we speak our truth. And the reality is when we have swallowed our truth, even if they do like us, it's not us they like. It's the
Mhm.
person we're playing in order to make them like us. That may be who they like. And probably, even if they do like us, they don't respect us. And it starts with self-respect. We need to respect ourselves first. And then it's like self-awareness. We need to be aware. We need to respect ourselves first. And if we don't respect ourselves, it's going to be very difficult for someone else to respect us.
100%. So the work that do you do individual counseling? I know you do group work on farms. Not
Yes.
sure where else you do your work. Tell us about it.
Mostly I do it and I have a couple of very, very beautiful retreats that border on sanctuaries. They're so lovely.
Mm,
And I don't use my own horses because my own horses are not particularly good at this work. They are highly skeptical of people that they don't know. So I
mhm.
don't feel like I could make a good impact on people developing the kinds of awareness we've talked about today. So I work on a couple of different ranches. I do also do some online programs, and the online programs are discussion based and it's mostly group work, although I do some individual work. And very often I combine programs where it's group work and individual work online. I find that when someone has worked with me online before they show up at the ranch, that we built the trust, we built the envelope, so they're ready to dive right in and do deep work immediately.
And could you tell us about the Cowgirls Code
I
and that
can tell you
marvelous
about the
workbook?
Cowgirls Code.
Amazing
Yes,
stuff.
and
Yes,
the workbook to help
yes,
people. So the
yes.
Cowgirls Code is my own code of conduct. So what I did to design the Cowgirls Code is I started out asking myself, what traits do I want to have? Who do I want to be? And then from there, I grouped the traits. And once I've grouped them into categories, into similar traits, I take a look at a list of core values to determine which core values. Now, for me, the core values were integrity, courage, compassion, and community. Those were my 4 core values. Then I asked, okay, when the rubber meets the road, how does that look in my life? Now, because I live on a horse ranch, I work with horses all the time. For me, it was the Cowgirls Code. So I'll just read you the Cowgirls Code. The first is be courageous, saddle up and ride. The second, recognize the divine moments within imperfect rides. The third is be open to the teachers and lessons in every pasture and on every trail. The fourth one, and this was a tough one for me to learn, was invite others to come along, especially when it's risky to ride solo. The next is mind your fences, protect your pastures from overgrazing. The next is respect others' fences. Don't expect others to feed your livestock. And finally is honor your commitments to yourself and others. So when something goes wrong in my life, I sit down, I read the Cowgirls Code one more time, and almost always I can recognize where I broke one of the codes. And something that I do is I have a handbook, a workbook that you guys are welcome to request that will walk you through the process. And then once a month, I do a free webinar where we do it as a group.
You have one coming up soon, I think.
I do. I have one coming up on February 18th, and then the next one will be March 18th.
Wow. Wow. And those are free?
They are free.
Remarkable. I will so be at one of those two.
Excellent.
Now, as I understand it, I don't have to be like I can adapt your cowgirl code to what I do. It can be the goodbye good girl code,
That's right.
right?
It can be. One of my clients wrote the golfer's code. Another wrote the writer's code. So whatever it is that makes sense to you,
I
you
love
can
it.
design it so that it really resonates with you. You're welcome to steal anything you want from the Cowgirls Code, but I really advise you to take and make it your own. Make it what you will resonate with.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, I'm going to get from you any information that will allow all of the people who watch this to get in touch with you
Yeah.
and to request that wonderful Cowgirls Code workbook and come to your events. And is there anything else you feel that you would like to share before we close this out?
I feel complete with what we've shared, and I've loved being here. This is such a passion for me
Yeah.
to understand how my world has changed as stepped into the leadership role and become a leader that others choose to follow. And what I know is that through overcoming feeling like an imposter, I now set an example that gives other women permission to do the same. And I think the more women we have, like you, like me, that stand up there, the more permission that others have to do the same, and the bigger the ripple gets.
Oh, that's so gorgeous. I could go on and on with this conversation because there's so much to talk about. And so we will have to do a part two. We will
And I
have to
would
talk.
love to do that.
Great, because right here, I want to take a sharp left turn at Albuquerque and talk about how, as a young woman, you might get the inspiration, but you might not be able to get your feet on the path.
That's right. That's right.
And that's
It
where my
really
work comes
is
in. Yeah.
right. It's lifelong learning. This is not a a one size fits all, and you do it once and you're fixed. This is the work of a lifetime.
Well, I'm foreseeing potential work together in some magical form where we'll have a whole bunch of women leaders and we'll all be inspiring women to rise.
Excellent. I'd love to
Yes.
be a part of it.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you,
Uh,
Lori. It's been a pleasure.
mine as well.